If you've ever wondered what the criterias are to get into perfume school, if you've ever wondered what it takes to be successful in perfume school, this is a video you should watch. Welcome to the Day Show. My name is Glenn, MrCologne76. I create content both on Instagram and YouTube with the sole intention of educating and inspiring my followers to smell good. My guest today, Dave Apel's Senior Perfumer and VP at Symrise Perfume House, is an internationally recognized and celebrated perfumer. He will be joining me for a discussion. We will be exploring and painting a picture of the world of perfumery school. How you doing, brother?
I'm good, thank you. How are you? It's good to finally connect.
I'm well. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for spending some time for us and agreeing to do this piece of content with me. I think it's really important. I've had a lot of people inquire about perfume school, so this is right on time.
Perfect. And thank you so much for having me talk about it. I love the subject, and I think we have a really wonderful opportunity here as well. So I think it'll be a great conversation.
Excellent. Well, for those that have just joined us, I'm going to introduce my guest again. This is Dave Apel, VP and Senior Perfumer at Symrise Perfume House. You are an internationally awarded perfumer, and I touched on the fact that you were the nose for one of my favorite perfumes. How long have you been in the perfumery world?
As of June 6th of this year, it's 41 years. So
wow,
yeah, it's been a terrific ride and a really great experience. So, and a long time.
That is impressive. Well, Dave, some people viewing this broadcast either today or after today, they don't really understand like what a perfume house is, what a perfumer does. So I want to kind of break things down a little bit. This way, if we have people that are unfamiliar with, what Symrise is, they can have a point of reference. What is Symrise for someone that doesn't know? How do you explain that?
It's a terrific question, and yeah, the world of perfumery is a complicated one. But Symrise, I think the easiest way to understand Symrise is the way that we understand it here ourselves. Basically, everything that goes in or on your body, or your children, or your pet included, we're involved with. And on the fragrance side, obviously, that means all those products that are in your daily life in every form. We provide the scent for those, and then we specialize. My particular specialty, things like the Bleecker Street you mentioned, thank you so much, and the fine fragrance that you have on your shelves behind you. But at the same time, we also do food and nutrition and skincare and probiotics and organic baby food and pet food. So it's a really complex company, and I mention all of those things because, in fact, all of those things tie together, which is what makes it pretty fantastic. So essentially, it is a very large company worldwide that handles all of those different things with lots of different avenues of exploration for us.
Wonderful. Thank you for providing that explanation. And I know you guys are legit worldwide. In fact, I was planning a trip to New York recently to visit the New York location. Where all are the Symrise centers? Where are they all located?
We're in, I can't give you the exact number of countries at the moment, but we're worldwide. I think we're in, 100 countries. Our headquarters is in Holzminden, Germany. We are in Paris and New York and Sao Paulo and Singapore and, Dubai, everywhere you'll find major centers of creativity. We're there. We're present in a big way. So it's a very large organization. But you mentioned New York. I motioned behind me. I'm in the New York office. We have 5 perfumers here. We have about 75 perfumers worldwide. So we are spread out in centers like this. The Park Avenue office where I'm located is, we can consider it more of a boutique kind of experience. Our Paris office is the showplace of the industry. In fact, it is one of the most extraordinary places to work. So we're all over.
Thank you. I'm gonna read a quote of yours that I found on
Oh
Fragrantica.
boy.
Let's see. It says, "Embrace the unexpected in life. It's usually a gift."
Yeah.
The reason I wanted to start with that quote is because your road to perfumery was a little bit different than someone that has attended perfume school. Would you talk a little bit about how you ended up in the world of perfumery?
Yes, I'd love to. It's a good question for me. But that quote, I cringed a bit when you said you had a quote for me because, but anyway, that's a good one. Yeah, I do believe that I stumbled into perfumery. As an American, it's not within our native culture, let's say. The French, of course, they grew up in a culture of perfume. It's long history, really infused their society in so many ways. And in an American culture, for me, growing up as I did, I had no exposure to it. I was studying environmental sciences with an emphasis on working for the department, EPA or environmental protection. And I stumbled into a fragrance company 41 years ago, as basically just working my way through college. And I started in their environmental department. And I immediately fell in love with the raw materials of creation. These amazing oils and gums and resins and all of these beautiful exotic things to me. And I never turned back. It was literally by happenstance that I wound up there. I didn't really understand the world of perfumery nor know a thing about it. And it was that drew me there. But those things are the things of natural beauty that I had been studying, to protect in some sense. So that sort of happenstance, that happy accident for me was the way into perfumery, which is, a big part of our topic tonight in terms of what we have to offer at Symrise as a really interesting experience. So.
Yeah. But Dave, you more than just stumbled into perfumery. You went on to become a renowned perfumer. So what, did you attend perfume school, or how did that happen?
Well, it's interesting that we're talking about the perfumery school tonight, and they chose a non-perfumery school perfumer to have the conversation. But I think what that shows, and why, in some sense, perfumery was my passion, was it completely consumed me. I found, as we've had a discussion about your passion and how you wound up doing this as you're doing just now. It's something about studying it, about learning it. The best perfumers I've ever worked with have been the most ardent students of perfumery. They never, ever stop learning. And I've worked with many of the greatest perfumers in the world. I still do every day. And their thirst for what's the magic behind this art, this science and this craft. It's so complex. There's so much to really investigate. I was completely hooked on it. I never turned back, and thank you. I did have a really wonderful time doing all the things that perfumery gave me an opportunity to do. And I think that that's the key, really, is that absolute driving curiosity about things. Hopefully we'll get into a lot of the different aspects of the job and how complex and creative it can be. So it just really grabbed me, I would have to say.
Yeah. I just thought of two questions.
Yeah.
One, who was the most influential person on your fragrance journey? And the second, if you had to do it again, would you have attended perfumery school?
Oh, two good ones. I would say that, the influences that I had were super numerous, but I'm going to name Helga Rotter. Helga Rotter was my first mentor. She was just very, very focused on consumer products. She worked in the analytical lab when I had first started in my fragrance world. And she basically taught me to be hungry and learn. She gave me the tools of knowledge and really made me learn on my own in some sense at that point. She was there to guide me, but she was the one who gave me that first opportunity. So in that sense, I think she was the most influential person for me because I understood what she was driving at. If you want to be with this, if you want to study it, it's your job to study it. If you're hungry, you'll get there and you'll find out. And that really was a tremendous lesson for me to learn. So she'd be the
Very
most
nice.
known. Yeah.
Very
Uh,
nice.
and as far as going to perfumery school, to be honest, for many, many years in my career, I guess I would say, to be blunt, I had a chip on my shoulder about not having gone to perfumery school. Later in my career, when I recognized that it was in some ways a real advantage to have an outsider's perspective of things, to have a kind of, I didn't learn the rules the way the rules are taught. I learned by studying other perfumes. It's not as if I didn't know what I was doing or looking at, but I wasn't necessarily learning directly as an apprentice to a master, which is the way perfumery is passed along. I was
Hmm.
taking the shortcut and learning it analytically, and there were gaps in that learning. And I'm learning these things today from the students that we have in our perfumery school, who we work with all the time. So it's this wonderful exchange of, in most cases, you would say a senior person teaching the younger person, but in certain cases, it's completely the opposite way around, where I'm learning new things from these new teachings that the perfumery students are having today. The advantage I believe that I had as an American, as an outsider, is that I brought something different to the table. And there were a few times I could pat myself on the back and say that it was from a particular perspective that we were able to accomplish something. But in general, I wouldn't do anything differently than I did before.
Wonderful. And you've made references to being an American in the perfume space, and we're going to touch on diversity in a little bit. It's my understanding that perfume students at the school in Holzminden, I had to really practice my pronunciation of Holzminden, Germany. They spend 2 years at perfume school, and then they transfer to one of Symrise's creative centers, and they get a mentorship. Is that right? So it's a 4-year commitment in terms of time, if someone is wanting to go down that road. Let's, if you will, if I may, let's talk about perfumers, independent versus in-house perfumers. If someone wanted to be an independent perfumer, would going to that school be a good option for them?
Going to the school would be a good option for anyone, no matter what type of perfumer they'd like to be, because the training for perfumery is as rare gets.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting you mentioned it as a 4-year commitment. I would warn anyone who starts this process, you'll never get back out, because it's just not something. It's not something people leave. It's just such an interesting, diverse, wonderfully exciting career to have. So. But yes, generally it's 2 years of study, and then 2 years, not just in one location, but in many locations, learning different, possibilities, different, whatever it is that your area of focus happens to wind up being, you'll be placed in a place that makes sense for that, and for you to learn and develop new talents and new things along the way. I'll just add one more thing. I reached out to a couple of the grads of the perfumery school who I'm working with, nearly every day, but they're in different locations, just for some feedback from them. And it's almost as you're describing right now, that what the students found most interesting of all is the camaraderie, learning different cultures, learning different people. Some of them learn multiple languages along the way, and the influences that that they were exposed to. It was just extraordinary, a life-changing experience for all of them. And I think that's what we have an opportunity to offer. So.
Very, very nice. I read an article about the experiences at this school, and that camaraderie was one of the things that was really highlighted.
Yeah.
If someone is watching this today, or watching this, 5 years from now, thinking about perfumery school, what are some of the requirements for application to the perfumery school at, the Symrise Perfumery School at Holzminden, Germany?
I'll be honest with you that all of the details of the requirements, the necessary requirements for education and otherwise, they can all be found on the links in the Symrise website. But by the same token, I think the most important thing is a real, solid desire for studying this. The thing that's interesting about it for me is that my job, we talked about the diversity of the work, is so vastly different today than I would have ever imagined in, forget 40 years ago, 20, 30, 10 years ago. It's an entirely
Mhm.
different experience because there's so much to evolve into. I'm involved in artificial intelligence right now in a very big way. I would never have imagined this in a million years. So the path in perfumery is a very, very interesting one with tons of different diversions along the way. So your area of interest, whether it's in something as complex as artificial intelligence, as beautiful as, being involved in the extraction of natural products, or just being hungry, creative, and wanting to express yourself through this art, any of those factors are, key in being successful in what you eventually try to do. But the
Mhm.
educational requirements and the rest you'll have to find on the website. They're all attached in this event as well. So.
Excellent, excellent. So if someone is wondering, well, do I need to be a chemist? Do I need to be an engineer? They can hop on the website, and there is a place on there that spells out the educational
Yes.
requirement. Excellent. You sort of touched on some of the qualities it takes to be successful in perfumery. Are there any other tangible things that someone may need for success in perfumery school?
I think I can't think of anything in particular other than, a chemistry background is always, an important aspect of it. I have, seen, I'm not, particularly adept at chemistry myself, but I've seen the value of it. And in today's world, it's a much more kind of essential thing. Beyond that, I really won't say that there is anything other than an ability to get along with others, an ability to be, inclusive. It is a family. We can say that as a simple kind of statement, but quite literally so. Some of my best friends in life are here working with me. So, it's a it's a group of people including, the rest of the industry, not just the people I work with at Symrise, but the broader industry itself. It is very, very much a common family. We all know each other in some sense or other. So becoming a part of that is a really terrific experience, I would say. I can't think of a thing that's necessary to be successful in it other than that passion.
Fair enough. You touched on diversity, and I know that the Perfumer School has some initiatives to increase diversity in the recruits, so to speak. Why is that important, and what are the initiatives the Symrise is currently undertaking?
Yeah, that's a great one. I mean, just to start with it, what's happening right now for us is remarkable. The opportunity to go to perfumery school is, as I said, it's incredibly rare. There are very few perfumery schools taking very, very few applicants. And in the Americas, the United States, South America, Brazil, Sao Paulo, where we are very, very prominent, there are really no teaching facilities, no really recognized perfumery schools. And so what we're offering right now, and very much right now, is an opportunity for applicants to apply to the perfumery school. And we will accept students here in New York and in Sao Paulo, where they will start their experience, if they're accepted, with a few months in our New York location or the Sao Paulo location, where they will begin their training of, understanding raw materials, the management and handling of them, and the general composition of how a fragrance is made. So it's an absolutely incredible opportunity starting there and moving on to the perfumery school in Holzminden. So it's, I'm really thrilled to be a part of the initiative. And the idea for diversity for us is because no training, as I said, in sort of this part of the world, if you will, we really are looking for different perspectives. Everything right now is about kind of getting a fresh perspective from different angles. And so in some sense, training perfumers from, let's say, another location and sending them here to work is not the same kind of perspective as an American sitting here working with a larger kind of knowledge base. And so we're looking to increase diversity, not just in that way, from the regional diversity, but also from a personal standpoint of general diversity. One of the things that's also remarkable about Perfumery is that, every stripe and flavor and, is like, it makes us better. There's just this sort of modern perspective that we're always striving to gain. And that's a big part of the push.
That is wonderful. I'm going to repeat that just so that if people missed it, you are currently accepting applicants here in the United States, and they will start off at the New York Symrise location. They will start their training there. For
Right
perspective,
here.
for perspective, how many spots are we talking here?
That will depend on the applicants and whether or not we can find enough. But in New York, we're accepting 2, which is huge. New York has their start. The acceptance would be for the whole entire Perfumery program that we're
Got it.
that commitment or that lottery ticket of a couple of years in Holzminden and spreading out throughout the world. But so the opportunity is there. But beginning in New York and beginning in Sao Paulo as an introduction to the materials themselves, and then going on to the Perfumery school. So it's a really unique opportunity. I've never actually heard of an opportunity like this in my entire career. Let me put it that way. It's a really extraordinary chance to wind up in an extraordinary job.
Yeah. Speaking of wonderful career, was there a time, was there something you did that stands out that you never imagined you would have been doing in the perfume industry?
Many, but I'll tell you, I mean, I've floated on the world's largest hot air balloon on the top of the canopy of the forests of Madagascar. I've been in dugout canoes and up the rivers of the Amazon, and trekking across deserts and volcanoes and everywhere in the world to look for raw materials, which is an extraordinary, hand-pollinating the vanilla that we are the largest company in the world to produce, hand-pollinating the vanilla orchids in Madagascar, and now working on artificial intelligence and creating the world's first pair of 100% artificial intelligence generated fragrances for one of our largest clients in that town, El Boticario. So that's a pretty big stretch of, really wild, crazy experiences. Some of the best things as well were really working with some, amazing people in the industry, celebrities included, and all of those stories. So this is a job that just absolutely runs the gamut.
Yeah. Well, hopefully one day you look back at this conversation, and this will be one of those moments that you reflect on, proudly. Let's talk about
it. I don't do Instagram and all the rest of this. So this is it. This is my very first one. So I certainly will remember this one forever. So thank you.
Well, my pleasure. And I'm glad that, it's happening with me. I want to talk a little bit about some of the iconic perfumers that came out of Symrise, just so people could kind of get some perspective on the caliber of perfumers that come out of Symrise.
Well, I can start with Maurice Roussel. Okay, Maurice Roussel is a master perfumer at Symrise, one of the greatest perfumers to live. Created some of these wonderful fragrances in the room that I'm sitting here with. The list is long, and the fact of the matter is that this is about a 235-year-old company with a heritage just remarkable. I mean, if we go back and we want to name all of the, Edmund Rudnitska and, all of the iconic perfumers of the past, they all worked through Symrise. So the list is enormous. The fragrances, are iconic. And the amazing thing about that is that in that history and all of that perfume history that this company has, we are now, and have been for years, learning from that old knowledge, if you will. We have the archives of those formulas. We look at them to update them to kind of, so it's looking into the past in a way, giving us an opportunity to also predict trends for the future and really see some of those remarkable secrets that are, kind of hidden in those gems of the past. So it's an enormous list of perfumers, but I'll leave it at Maurice for the moment. He's enough.
Yeah. If you had to name one that perhaps had the biggest impact on the fragrance industry, would it still be Maurice, or is there another?
I think I would still say Maurice. Maurice actually, and I will be bold to say this, but had a similar path to mine, or I should say the other way around. I had a similar path. He started not in a traditional way and wound up doing a lot of his study through analytical means, to the point where he actually is credited with, really introducing a new technique towards analyzing fragrance. He worked in the labs in Chanel, and from that point on, he just, as I said, he's one of the hungriest students of perfumery I've ever known in my life. So, so he would still, be the one. I would have to say Rudnitska historically is, such an iconic figure that, I'll name him, but we've had Jean-Louis Suizac, and I'll run out of names if I kept going. Jean-Claude Elena and Bernard Elena, and many, many amazing perfumers throughout our history.
Yeah. What would be your mark? What would be your mark on the fragrance industry?
I would be best to leave that to others, I guess. But I guess if I had to be bold enough, I would say. I talk about this American's perspective, and I think at some point there's a certain part of that I think, I feel around the time of my coming of age, if you will, there was a big perspective on that type of scent through like the Calvin Kleins of the world and all of that, and there was, I had some success along that period of time with things that were typical from my experiences in this, area that I grew up in, the New England coastline. And I really was heavily influenced by that ruggedness, the sort of birch leaf and the crashing surf and all of that. And I used that quite a few different ways in the beginning of my career, and was somehow or other, told along the way that was an American type of influence. These are new notes for the world of perfumery in some sense. So maybe that. Ultimately, it'll probably be artificial intelligence and the creation of those fragrances as the beginning of, this whole AI boom continues, as it should in perfumery. Yeah.
I saw there was a question here from, let's see, this was from Parfum Marchadin. Are you able to expand on the artificial intelligence work you're doing in fragrances?
Yeah, I would love to. We collaborated at Symrise with IBM. The team at IBM is led by Dr. Richard Goodwin, who is the director of computational creativity. It was a pairing that came about coincidentally. The pairing came about through our direction, but the first opportunity to create a fragrance that way came about sort of in a different way. Regardless, it drew me into the process, and I'm technologically a nightmare. I barely could get onto your event tonight, but the logic of it, the thinking behind it, and the interesting nuts and bolts of putting it all together, it was one of the most exciting. It was probably, one of the most exciting parts in my career. The way that AI comes together is that we basically have a tool, and that is called Filira. Our AI system is called Filira, in collaboration with IBM, and we are about to roll it out to the entire perfumery global community. There's a core group of people who are working on it at the moment. What this tool does for us, and it really is, a super advanced tool, but it's at our direction, if you will, is it enables us to pinpoint what we are kind of searching for in a lot of different ways. It's a technically very precise tool that we could, we can kind of fine tune things if we would like to. But the reality for me and for a big part of the Perfumery team is that, perfumers are developing this tool. And our direction at the moment is to find the most creative avenues of exploration. In other words, combinations that in millions, and now we're at almost 2.5 million formulas in the archives and in Filera. What's not been done before? What has happened in the past that it's time to do again? I'll give you those little simple snippets of an idea. The fact of the matter is that this is a tool that we are building today and every day. It's a constant process, and it is an incredibly wonderful tool for us to have. But we don't know yet exactly what we're going to be able to do with it. We know how much we can create with it and where we can find unexpected surprises in fragrance and how we can transform fragrance performance-wise and in other ways. But the beginning of this process shows us how much possibility there is at the end, and we don't know where it will lead. So it's a very exciting process to be a part of.
It sounds very exciting indeed. I will share something with you. A couple of years ago, I asked a question to my audience about, what if there was a machine that you can have at home. A perfumer creates a formula and uploads that to the machine, and this machine could then generate a perfume at home just based on that formula. It was all imaginary, but there was a real big objection to that machinery being placed in the world of perfumery as art. What has been the feedback with this artificial intelligence thing that you're making?
Yes, very much to the point. When I said earlier that I might be most remembered for artificial intelligence, in some sense, that may not be the thing I'd like to be remembered most for. But in fact, it is something I'm super proud of. And the reason for that is, I describe it this way. The greatest chefs in the world and the greatest kitchens in the world, on the one side of the kitchen is, the latest high-tech gadget, a frother, or whatever it is, a microprocessor, if you will. On the other end of the room is fire, right? It's still like you're still cooking. It's still the same thing. Perfumery is exactly the same for me. The tools of, Filera, it is an avenue of exploration that's my partner as the perfumer. I'm looking at the results, and it's not a robot hooked up to the lab that creates something. It's my creative system right in front of me that's feeding me ideas that I may never have thought of. I may reject them because they're not interesting to me, but there's a logic behind their suggestion that is intriguing enough for me to look into. And that's the type of tool that I like to have as a partner. It's as if you had an evaluator, or our partners in our creative process we call evaluators here at Symrise. So I'll smell with them and they'll give me feedback. But if they gave me feedback that was just something, they made a suggestion that was not just appealing to me, but I knew that it had never been tried before. Wow, I want that, right? I want to try that thing. And I think Filera, for me, is that tool. It shows me a path that I didn't know existed before. And yet, as a perfumer, I still am the one who decides that's a path that I'm interested in going down. Other perfumers would pick a different path. It's hard to explain it to you, but it's such an interactive tool that everyone that's been involved with it so far is absolutely addicted. So we are building this tool for the future. We're building it with the students. Half of the students, are involved in the whole process. And it's just a wonderful experience in general. So,
how far in the future may we see this technology?
We see this technology today. We've created several fragrances on the marketplace with it. The two I mentioned in Boticario as the first example. That was a Ageo On project. So it's there, and it's rapidly evolving and pretty all-consuming at the moment.
Wonderful. This is exciting. How you feel about some questions from our audience?
I'm sorry?
How do you feel about answering some questions from our audience?
I would love to.
All right. So if you're watching this and you have a question for Mr. Apel, please click the question mark at the bottom of the screen. Leave your question there, and I will visit that area and get questions from there. It's a little bit easier than just putting them in the conversation. While we're waiting for people to add their questions there, I had a really good question from one of my followers today. I don't remember the account name, but the question was for someone interested in becoming a perfume evaluator. Is there a pathway at the perfume school?
That's an excellent question, and I don't have the answer to it, to be honest with you. But I would say, once in the perfumery school, your interests guide where you're going to wind up. I know I mentioned that some perfumery school students and grads are working on AI, for instance, with me, and their area of expertise and interest is far different than my area of expertise and interest, but they're still perfumers and I'm still a perfumer, but we have different, focuses, and in some cases, perhaps evaluation is a path that is, more to your style. The perfumery school is to teach perfumers, though. I would leave it there, and
Okay.
yeah.
It kind of sounds like medicine in the sense that, people go to med school, but then decide they want to be a surgeon, a psychologist, So it kind of reminds me a little bit of the world of medicine. I'm going to hop in here and see what we have for questions.
Good.
Let's see here. This is a question from Kathleen Soriero. Kathleen, her question is, what do you think about headspace?
I think Headspace is one of the other exciting tools that we have in perfumery. We use it all the time. Headspace analysis is the technique of capturing the volatile components of basically anything. We use it a lot for botanicals when you don't want to, in particular, damage or harm the botanical. And it really kind of just, it's a great representation of what you actually smell, as opposed to when you extract a flower through some chemical means, let's say steam distillation or otherwise. It's a complete different experience. So it's a really interesting tool as well for discovering new things about nature and about the way that molecules interact. So I think Headspace is great.
Yeah. Is there a latest and greatest in the headspace space, so to speak? What's been the latest and greatest with that technology or discovery?
Yes, we have a technology that is more, in fact, it's a solid headspace, if you will, that extracts in a more precise manner. Headspace analysis will give you the volatile components, but the ratios of the mixtures are incredibly complicated to put back together accurately, based on the volatility of various materials, but also the closed space itself. So we have a method to do that where you're actually, it's like call it a dry extraction, if you will. And what it does is give you a much more precise analytical way to look at raw materials. So other than that, Headspace is an active tool that I think basically we use in very many cases where we don't want to, impact the botanical that we're looking at, if it's a rare flower or a situation like that.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Dave. Here's a question from the post that the Symrise had done for today's live. This question comes from Con Christina. What are upcoming scent trends being discussed at Perfume School? And for Dave, where do you find your best inspiration? So a two-part question: trends in Perfume School and inspiration. Okay.
Well, the trends in the perfume school, the trends are discussed everywhere in our daily work. If I picked up my camera and walked around the room, you'd see various presentations here about just that, trends. We're constantly on top of, trends in all around the world, because we're actually, presenting those trends to our clients who, so it's this constant feedback loop. I couldn't name one particular thing except for the fact that at the moment, we're really looking into, I mean, I think appreciating nature has never been more obvious than it seems to be right now. This, real push towards everyone wanting to have some sense of that, natural environment that we, liked to be exposed to during the, this past year and a half or so. The peacefulness that brought as well. So there's a big push towards that, and many, many other things, trends all going on at once. I will say, in terms of my own inspiration, I can say that I've been inspired by very many things in my creations. I've been inspired by architecture. I was inspired by a trend by looking at the differences between the European and U.S. Marketplace over a period of time. But I'm most often inspired by nature. I'm out. I kayak. I hike. I'm a very active outdoor person, and I love to be, exposed to kind of the extremes as well in the environment. So it's generally an experience in nature. That's my favorite inspiration.
Beautiful. I'm going to hop back in here and see what we have for questions. Again, if you're watching this and you have a question for Dave, click on the question mark that's at the bottom of the screen. Leave your question there, and I will visit that section. I have a question here from Studio Scent SF. What are your thoughts on indie or artisanal perfumers?
All for it. I mean, I think I met a woman 2 days ago who created her own fragrances just out of combinations of fragrances. You can call it layering if you would like to, but they were pretty specific, and some oils from around the world and her own little mix and match. And she wore that fragrance for like 10 years. This is what she does. She makes that same blend all the time. Could I call her a perfumer? Certainly. She's experimenting with scent and trying to express herself in that way. But, I think real indie perfumers are perfumers who've, been, I would say they've been trained, or at least they've had a passion to experiment with scent. But if you're talking, and if you're talking about the indie brands, the indie brands, I think are where most of the really fun stuff happens in my world of perfumery. That's where you get interesting kind of combinations you wouldn't otherwise find in a more kind of broadly commercial arena. So I'm all for the extremes of perfumery, if you will, finding those edges and those kinds of unique opportunities for creating unusual scents.
I like that. Thank you for that question, Studio Scent SF. I'm going to read another question from our post. This was the post again from the Symrise Fine Fragrance Stories. Are there age requirements or funding assistance? Are there grants available for non-German students? Do you know anything about that?
Well, first of all, what's available is available for all students, and not the German or not. But I don't know about that, to be honest with you. I think that all of that information is available on the website, and on the link to this through Symrise.
Excellent. I'm going to hop back in here, see what our wonderful audience has left us. Let me scroll here. So here's a question from Gallagher Taryn. Of all your fragrances, of all your creations, do you have a personal favorite?
Oh boy. Yeah, I think I do. Yes. I created a Nino Cerruti 1881 Pour Femme. And it's my personal favorite because there was such a unique experience during the project. I loved the fragrance. At the time, it was really, something I was, and still am, very proud of. But it was also a kind of life-changing experience for me. And I generally equate the fragrances that I have had success with to a time, the whole experience, because it's never just, a simple thing. And it was, it was a really wonderful experience between the U.S. and Paris, and a kind of stepping out for me as a perfumer. One of the bold moments I had in my career that helped me to, jump to another level, if you will. So,
Yeah. What was the fragrance again, Dave?
Nino Cerruti, 1881 for women, 1881 Perfume. It's an oldie but a goodie. Anyway, it has a special place for me. Let's put it that way.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for sharing that. Great question there, Gallagher Taryn. Let's see what else we have for questions here. The Bella Dossier. What's your favorite thing about working at Symrise, New York?
Oh, the people, honestly. I honestly, it's a great place to come. I enjoy my day here every day. And I just love the work. It's, it's every day is different. Every day I'm, mixed up in something that's interesting, challenging, and yeah, I think it's that. What I love the most is the diversity of what I get to do and the people I get to do it with. Yeah.
That's fair. That's fair. Let's see what else I had written down from the posts. Let's see. Okay, so most of the questions on that that I had written down were kind of specific questions that I think they can find when they visit the Symrise website. So I won't ask those. Let's see here. Here's a question from Lily Fan. Do you think China will become a major market in perfumery in the near future?
Absolutely, without question. It already is, headed rapidly there, and so is every major fragrance house and marketer trying to really become a part of that. Excuse me, and I think that's a big push in every company worldwide. So yes, I do.
Yeah. I've got two questions of my own. One is based on a theory I had shortly after Corona really took the world by storm. I have a theory that this pandemic is going to change the world of perfumery in the sense that having to wear masks, it's going to want us to create fragrances that have a little bit more sillage, a little bit more projection, because for the most part we are walking around with our faces covered. Has that played a part in from the creator's standpoint? Has the pandemic affected anything like that?
Personally speaking, I don't see that in the work that I'm being asked to do, and the meetings that I've been involved in with it. But I do understand your point, and I completely agree that the pandemic has changed things in very, very perceptible ways. I mean, I know for me as a perfumer, one of the things I did over the pandemic, because I did spend a lot of time, at home in my garden and elsewhere, was to make infusions of some of our natural products. So at very, very low levels. And, I really wanted to play with the aging of those things. So aging them in different types of vessels. And so, all of it being about this, precise kind of care of these beautiful natural raw materials and having them be more showcased within your creations, because for me, I saw almost a kind of a gentler approach towards fragrance, if you will, that there was a little bit more of appreciation of a subtle thing rather than, having to overcome all the noise and all of the commotion and all the rest of it. There was more opportunity for sort of, subtlety and let's say peacefulness within the creation. So,
all right.
But who knows?
Right.
I don't know which one of us is going to be right, but
Well,
there'll be change.
I'm certain you have way more information with regards to the world of perfume creation than I ever will. So we will go with your answer. I'm going to take another question here from our audience instead of asking my own, just to be fair to those that are here. We have a question here. Let's see, question here from Amanda Blends. What do you see as the role of indie artisan perfumers within the industry? So I don't know if this is, I think it's a different question than we had from Studio Sent SF. So I'm going to put the question up there. What do you see as the role of indie perfumers within the industry?
Perfumers, indie perfumers, you'd have to tell me who they are. But like the indie brands associated with, some big name perfumers, I'm assuming that's the question. absolutely influential in the way that we get to create as well. And I'll say that because, artisanal, using the word artisanal there with indie, is artisanal represents to me, looking behind me, our Delaire heritage. Those are artisanal creations that are used by perfumers around the world in their creation. So artisanal means sort of handcrafted. You can see the materials. They're building blocks of an idea, if you will. And when you make an artisanal fragrance, in a way, it's the same thing. You're creating something that lets you see each part of the story in a way that's just very tied together in a very in a handcrafted way, if you will. And I think that has influenced the way that a lot of perfumers approach creation. For me, I respond more directly to that. I find it, to be a much more, almost a primitive way to express myself, rather than, as I talked about before, through the pandemic, this fine-tuning and delicate. There are many perfumers who I greatly admire who work in that way. I don't generally have the patience, and I like a more, kind of bold scent, if you will, and I think artisanal and indie gives us a chance to do that.
Okay. All right. We'll take a couple more questions, and then we will start wrapping things up. Let me hop back in here. How are you doing with the questions, Dave?
Very good. Thank you. I hope the answers are working out, but
yeah.
Good.
We appreciate you. Let's see here. Do Symrise plants around the world interact, collaborate with each other on projects? That's a great question. This is from Nalu Ruko.
Well, I'm such a terrible employee that I passed up on a really good opportunity before when you asked me about a fragrance that meant a lot to me, if you will. My best example of how we collaborate is exactly another story about a fragrance I'm very proud of, and that was a fragrance we did here a few years back, Carolina Herrera 212 VIP NYC. That fragrance was created by 4 perfumers globally who became very best friends. And that experience itself was a few years after I got here. I'd been here for about 15 years, and it was just exceptional. The collaboration is constant. I'll use that one as the example. It was Emily Cooperman, Lucas Rizak, Carlos Vinals, and myself. And 2 in New York and 2 in Paris, and this constant nonstop kind of collaboration, which was a very, very exciting part of my career. The collaboration always exists. We work on each other's formulas. We trust each other implicitly, which is very rare. In the world of perfumery, what you really wind up with, even within their own house, perfumers are generally secretive. Perfumery is passed on from a master to an apprentice, and but not to another apprentice, if you will. So it's this passed along by generation to generation. And when you have an open collaborative spirit, as we have here, really greatly started through the perfumery school as well, that kind of spirit, which every one of the students talks about, it just leads to amazing opportunities and yeah, collaboration, but also, camaraderie. It's a unique experience.
Yeah. I know when I looked at the perfumers for the Sean John, I think that fragrance was called Unforgiven.
Unforgivable.
Unforgivable. And I wore that fragrance for years, primarily back in the day when I wore a lot of designer fragrances. Unforgivable was one of my party scents.
All right.
And when I started doing a little research, I noticed that a few perfumers, including yourself, created that. Can you tell us a little bit about what that experience was like working with Sean John?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned before that this is a career that I never would have imagined in a million years. Those are the types of things I wouldn't have imagined doing either. He was incredibly involved in the process, like intimately involved. To be honest about it, he was nervous about creating fragrance, and because it's an invisible world, it's just he can do every other thing that he does, but for this, it gave him, and I don't feel bad saying it, gave him some pause to do it, because he knew he would be judged by his peers as well, and they're a pretty rough crowd of critics, if you will.
Right.
So he got himself so directly involved in that process that we worked one-on-one and with a group of us together, the perfumers and him in his house, everywhere that he traveled, we would wind up going there to visit and work. And he did not stop until he got the very best fragrance. And I will say truthfully that I think that was being part of the collaboration as well. I don't feel so like I'm boasting, but that was a really darn good fragrance with a lot of good stuff in it. And that was Sean who drove that process, I will say.
Yeah. Wow, that is incredible. We're going to take one more question and then we're going to wrap up. We have all these wonderful questions. I will encourage those of you that didn't get your questions answered to when I upload this to my IGTV, you can ask your questions there. I had a conversation with the Instagram folks at Symrise, and they did say they would come back and get answers. So if you didn't get your questions answered today, please leave them there and we will get them answered. It's just impossible, but we've had such great questions. Let's see here. Question here from Claudia Nairi. Excellent question. When two perfumers work together, do they take on different roles or levels? Example, one person does the opening, another does the base. Like, how does that really work?
Everything is possible. It's an interesting question. I like the question a lot. I very often work in pieces, if you will. An accord, I would call it an accord. I'm trying to capture maybe this like dark, plummy, smoky depth in the background. It's a piece. It's not a whole fragrance. And so maybe I'll focus on that while my colleague is working on something much more, floral and bright in a top note, and then we'll play each other's work back and forth until we find a nice balance. Sometimes it is like that. And sometimes you're looking very specifically at the fragrance itself and, fine-tuning and tweaking, giving a different perspective on just the balance of raw materials or a selection of materials that you're using or the sort of general composition. So it can go in any possible way, but it could be a top, mid, and back kind of thing as well. Yes.
Very, very cool. There has been a trend in the social media blogging space. We've had a few influencers now release fragrances. Is that something that Symrise is looking at?
Of course, we're always looking at, influencers and any opportunity where people are creative, have, great ideas or innovative thoughts, and trying to find a way to either help them to develop or to, be a partner with them in some other way, on the creative side as well. So always open to that in every level, in every one of our centers around the world, because, we also know that's where a lot of the interesting stuff comes from, so yes, certainly always looking for it.
All right. I think that's a really good way to wrap up this session. Dave, again, I want to thank you for spending this time with us. I hope that my questions allowed you the opportunity to tell everything you wanted to about the Perfumery School. Is there anything else that you would like to share?
Yes, I can't stress enough how unique this opportunity is. It's an absolutely thrilling, it's a thrilling job to be in. I don't even know what to call it because it's not a profession, it's not a job. It is a life. I think that the opportunity, look at all leave all your questions. We'll certainly have all the answers for you. Because it's really worth taking a shot at. So I welcome all the candidates. I wish you all the best of luck, and I look forward to seeing you in New York.
Yes, sir. Most definitely, you will. I hope you guys enjoyed today's live session. Again, I wasn't able to answer every single question. Every question I did answer was amazing. So I encourage you to leave your questions on the repost of today's live. I want to give a huge thank you to the Symrise team. You guys will not know this, but there was a team of people at Symrise that I was communicating back and forth with for over 2 months to make today happen. And, I'm a little bit of a perfectionist when I do these collaborations. Things have to be just done just perfectly. And they were understanding and super, super patient with me to make changes to the things that I wanted. And it was indeed a great opportunity. I hope today's live will serve as a resource to anyone wanting to, explore the world of becoming a perfumer. I know I myself has always said that if I was to make a perfume, I would want to go the route of attending perfumery school, just because I know I don't have the time to invest in teaching myself. So I'd rather just go to perfume school. If you enjoyed today's session, if you found some value, I'm going to ask a favor. When I post this on my page, if you would share this in your stories, let people know that I had this wonderful conversation with Dave Apel today about the perfume school. I'm going to say goodbye for now, and I'll talk to you guys.